welcome to Nonnie's Kitchen. Today I would like to show you a little bit about mixing and pouring epoxy resin. The first things first, please like and subscribe so I can keep this going as long as I can. And for your prep, you want to make sure your surface is level. When I first started, I didn't, and everything turned out at an angle. A silicone mat, wax paper, Ziploc bags, anything with a non-stick surface is good. Wax paper is easier because you can just pull it up and throw it away when you're finished. I have my molds out. I'm going to be using the honey pot mold. I have silicone measuring cups. A lady I ran into Hobby Lobby reminded me to use a felt tip marker on the molds if you can't see your numbers. Thank you for that, by the way. My mixing cup, golden mica powder. I also use a heating mat, which I have on underneath of all this. The heating mat helps the bubbles to rise, and bubbles are your enemy. Make sure your room temperature is between 72 and 75 degrees. If it's too cold or too hot, your resin will not turn out right. It'll be gummy or bendy. If your resin is too cold, you can soak it in hot water no longer than 10 minutes. I use the amazing Clear Cast. It's a 2-part clear coating and casting resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, which means 1 part A to 1 part B. There is a 2-to-1 ratio, which is 2 part A to 1 part B. But like I said, this is a 1-to-1 ratio. And I figured that it's going to take 180 milliliters, which is roughly about 6 ounces, to fill the jar and the lid. So we do 90 milliliters of A, and then we'll do 90 milliliters of B. I have my PPE. I'm using gloves. Some people like to use goggles and wear masks. I just use my gloves though and have plenty of ventilation. I'm going to be using a frother. We are frothing. You'll notice when you're mixing your resin, you'll see swirls. Once the swirls are gone, then you'll know that your resin is mixed. It takes roughly about 3 to 5 minutes. And then what you can do is mix it a few more minutes just to make sure that it's mixed really, really well. If you're mixing it by hand, the plastic stirring sticks work really well. Just keep in mind that the wooden ones will cause more bubbles. You can mix it on the heating mat. There's this lady that I know, and I asked her which mold I should use as an example for this lesson. And after thinking about it for a few minutes, she said, "My head is made up. I want you to use the honey pot and make it gold." I said, "Alrighty." And that's what we're doing. There are different types of resin, so make sure that you have the right one for what project you're doing. When you're measuring and trying to figure out how much resin to use for your mold, you can fill your mold with water and measure it that way. I like to soak my molds in Lysol and hot soapy water. Now for my mica powder. That's a nice color for the honey pot. You can use a mold release spray. I don't have that yet, but I plan on ordering some and trying it out and seeing how well it works. These chemicals are going to react. This does heat up. I'm going to leave my heating pad on for about an hour to an hour and a half. I don't like to leave it on any longer than that because that gets really hot. But it does seem to help the bubbles to rise. And that's what you want. You want to get rid of those bubbles. There we go. I'm just going to kind of push this down in there and open that up a little bit and get the resin down in that crack real good and those crevices. Because there are grooves down in there because it is a lid and it will screw on. The less you have to do when you demold it, the better. I have a heat gun that I'm going to use. You can also use a lighter or a torch or a hair dryer. Now the torches are normally used for the river tables. A lighter, it does okay. But the heat gun, these heat guns work pretty good. And I haven't tried a hair dryer yet, which should pretty much do the same thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes and use this, come back in here and use this heat gun on this again. This type of resin has a work time of 30 to 40 minutes and a curing time of 24 to 48 hours. So keep in mind your work time. So I'm going to set my timer and I'll be back in 10 minutes to use my heat gun on it again. Welcome back, everyone. It's been 10 minutes. I'm going to use my heat gun on these one more time before I let them sit for the night. You do have to know when to stop. Still working on that. Okay. I will see y'all tomorrow. We'll come back and we'll demold this. Y'all have a good night. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back. Okay, it's time to demold this thing. Let's see what we got here. Just want to kind of push back around the edges. Get it started. There we go. That looks pretty good. There's little ridges in there. Okay, it's the jar part. And when you have something like this, where the center is hollow, if you just twist, you get a little bit of air down there in that pocket, it'll just come right out. That turned out pretty good. Let's see here. Normally, if I see any like rough edges or anything, I use metal files. And sometimes a light grade sandpaper will work if you wet sand it. I like to take a little piece of twine, tie it around the lid. There we go. Keep in mind, this type of resin is not food safe. You can store pretty much anything in it, like lotion, beads, anything other than food. So thank you guys for watching. If there's anything that you would, any kind of a mold that you would like to see me do on the show, please let me know. And if I don't have it already, then I'll get it and we'll do it. All right, y'all have a good evening.